Hey guys, how are you? It's Ramin Satuda from Variety. We're very excited about the Instagram Live that we're about to do. Hey David.
How you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Good.
David Corenswet from Hollywood and The Politician. We're very excited to have you here with us today on Variety's Instagram Live account.
Very excited to be here. Honored
You,
to be here.
you seem very seasoned in the Instagram Live because some of the other actors that we've been talking to have trouble logging in or aren't able to to get on so quickly. But as soon as we signed on, you were on. So we appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's a combination of I'm sure everybody being at home and just getting on their own phone. It's a little harder to get that pressure to be on time or to be a little early. But I'm definitely down for that. And in the last week, I feel like I've gotten to know the ins and outs of social media better than I have in my last 7 lifetimes.
How are you doing in self-isolation?
Pretty well, considering. Very lucky to be in an apartment in LA that's well stocked and I can operate well in, and in touch with family, and everybody's safe and healthy, and in touch with friends, which has been really important. Feeling very lucky and committed to making the best of it.
So I wanted to ask you, I have lots of questions about Netflix's Hollywood. It's your first starring role in a TV show, right?
I mean the Politician last year was my first role as a series regular on a show that went to air, that was seen by people. But that was a somewhat short-lived stint. Hollywood really my first chance to get to see a character through, from the beginning to the end.
And you were offered Hollywood while you were doing The Politician, right, from Ryan Murphy?
Just afterwards, long enough afterwards that I had given up all hope that I was ever going to be involved in any other Ryan Murphy stuff. I fell in love with the cast of The Politician. They're all such lovely people, so I was totally crestfallen at the end of the season, thinking that there was no way they were going to bring me back. And then the conversations about Hollywood, before I even knew it was Hollywood, but just the conversations about something else started within a couple of weeks after we finished The Politician.
And did you have to audition for Hollywood, or was it an offer because you'd worked on The Politician?
No, it was an offer. Actually, it was the first. I think it was the first role I was ever offered without an audition, which is awesome, considering that I've auditioned so many hundreds of times in my since I graduated from school, and as much as I tried to commit to getting better to it and getting better at it and doing well with it, improving, it's a totally different skill from being on set. I really, it's not my favorite thing to do. I think there are a lot of limitations. People describe it as the sort of like democracy. It's the worst way, except for all the other ways to cast a project. So it was really nice to have the offer center around a conversation with somebody who I'd worked with before and who knew what I was like on set. And that was really that's a privilege and a gift and a rare one, I think.
What's your worst audition story?
Oh God. Well, actually, okay, I've got a great answer for this. So, Alexa Fogel, who cast The Politician, very veteran New York casting director, casts all of David Simon's shows. She was cast the first time I went in for her. She was casting The Deuce, and I was auditioning for a bartender in the first season of The Deuce, and I was really excited about it. It was a great little scene. And I came in really prepared, except I didn't have my sides because at the time in New York I did not have a printer, as I think many actors straight out of school living in New York don't. They beg, borrow, and steal, or I guess I had just gone out of school, and so we would print stuff out at school. Mm-hmm. So I showed up without my sides, and I was very off book. But at the very end of the scene, I screwed up one line, and that screw up just totally knocked me off my feet. And so I kept doing the scene over and over again and would just stumble over lines here and there until finally Alexa had to ask me if I wanted to step out of the room for a minute. And that had never happened to me before, where I had to like take a minute. And so I did, and I stepped out, and I stepped back in, and I did okay. I actually got a call back for that role. And then Alexa ended up casting me in The Politician. And she's a really, she's an actor's casting director, so she's very supportive and she's very understanding, but she's also tough and expects a lot, expects you to show up and do your best. So that was a heck of an experience. First time in with a casting director, one that I will hope to not repeat anytime soon.
So you could relate to Rock Hudson's experiences in Hollywood.
Oh man, I mean, 67 is a lot it takes for a screen test, but yeah, look, you got all the words on the page and somebody's written them, but it's up to you to say them in order and say them believably, and yeah, 67's a lot though. I stepped out after maybe 6 or 7 tries. It would take a lot to get to 67.
How did you prepare for Hollywood? Did you watch a lot of movies from the 1940s? I know your character is a composite of multiple actors during that time period. It's not based on a single person. But how did you sort of get ready to shoot and become him?
Yeah, just watching old movies, basically. The cool thing about the character, the easy thing, the thing that sort of lets you off the hook is he doesn't know anything. He's been in the war. I had, in my time as a student, like done a good amount of research about World War II, talked to my grandfather who fought in World War II. So I had a good backdrop of the European theater, which is really Jack's only history. His only experience as of yet is fighting in the war. And so when he shows up to LA, he knows very little about movies and very little about the movie stars, other than the fact that he's seen them on the big screen. So I didn't have to go and do a bunch of sort of academic research. I could just watch the movies like he would have watched the movies. And I rewatched, those were the only movies we watched. Singing in the Rain and the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movies, and old movie musicals, Guys and Dolls, and that kind of thing. So I got to just go back and rewatch a lot of those movies, and then watch some movies that I had wanted to see that I hadn't, some classics, Brando movies and James Dean movies. A lot of James Dean movies that are very weird. Rebel Without a Cause, I rewatched. Because I was kind of hoping that Jack would turn out to be that kind of like bad boy in the end. I knew he was starting off kind of wide-eyed and earnest, but I was hoping that he was going to end up with some kind of edgy turn in the end, which it didn't quite happen. He turned out to just be kind of a softie. But so I watched Rebel Without a Cause, and it's such a strange movie. The narrative is kind of all over the place, and obviously it's very special, and it's got a bunch of like very special performances and a couple of really great scenes. But I just thought, like, wow, things, Elia Kazan was doing interesting stuff with East of Eden, another kind of weird one. And so it was fun to get to watch those classics and have the sort of mixed feelings of like, I mean, clearly there are amazing and iconic moments in this, but also some moments that I really had trouble following or just didn't quite understand what was happening.
And the rhythm of filmmaking was so different then, too. I think that we're so used to the sort of independent film world and what happened in the 90s to sort of influence filmmaking that sometimes when you go back and watch sort of the leisurely pace of storytelling, it does feel very different.
Yeah, leisurely and meandering, the feeling of like, yeah, because, seeing anything up on screen in those days was pretty cool and somewhat revolutionary. So, yeah, I'm definitely a fan of that. I appreciate all kinds of filmmaking, but I do think that to the extent that people's attention spans have shortened, or just people think that people's attention spans have shortened, I think we lose something in those epic, stories that take a little while to get going and really take their time. So it is fun to go back and really see, especially for actors, seeing actors take the time to get into characters and develop them over the course of a film.
Did you find that you had to change sort of the cadence of your voice or the speed of your voice, given that you were living a character that lived in the 1940s?
Yeah, that was my favorite thing of the whole thing. My favorite thing of the whole project was getting to talk in that. It's kind of a dialect. It's also just kind of milieu, a style. The thing I appreciate the most about period pieces in film and television is the subtle. I mean, the best example is like the way men handle their hats. Because it's like smoking cigarettes, where if you don't smoke cigarettes, it's very hard to pretend to be very good with a cigarette. And with first half of the century hats, which men would wear all the time, there's just an ease, and which hand you hold it in, and whether you hold it by the brim or the crown, how you pass it from hand to hand, how you put it up on a rack or take it down. That kind of thing. That's the best example, but it applies to the way you put your hands in your pockets, and the way you talk, the way you deliver the lines. And the great thing about Ryan and Ian and Janet's writing, it was that it really drew from the turns of phrase were the kinds where you couldn't say it in a perfectly contemporary dialect because it would just sound kind of weird. So it always took a little bit of leaning into that night. Too much time on Instagram.
Oh, is that what that is?
So, yeah.
You timed out for a second.
Yeah, I'm trying to be diligent about my screen time. It's very easy to while away the hours, and I'm trying to be diligent and disciplined about it.
What's your limit?
An hour for Twitter and Instagram on civilian days. I mean, it is last week we spent a lot more than an hour a day because promoting the show, and we did a bunch of live tweets and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I gave myself a break those days. But when it's not for professional reasons, I want to make sure I don't end up just scrolling the day away. But so my favorite thing is getting to talk in that dialect because I grew up watching those films. There's also something about the Philadelphia, Delaware County dialect, which is where I grew up and where I went to school in formative years. There are certain vowels that are sort of mid-Atlantic. I had this conversation with Darren when we talked last week, where I say his name Darren, and he says it Darren. And most people, I think, say Paris, and I don't know, what are the other good examples? But for some reason, how I grew up, I say Paris. And the Mid-Atlantic dialect would always say Paris, and dancing. There's sort of a more wide, a more open, lilt to it. It also is the thing that we spent the most time on in school. There's a lot of voice training at Juilliard, and in school it's called Standard American, not Mid-Atlantic, but it's just the way that you learn all the different vowels so that you can do any different dialect and be understood, basically. But it's frustrating for young actors to sit there and learn those very specific, the difference between dance and dance, because you're thinking, like, who really cares? Is this really going to matter? What's it going to, most of what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be doing just my own dialect anyway. And in the theater, most of the great American plays were written before 1960. And so, like, those that are in the canon, you want to have that dialect for. And so it's a rare but great opportunity to get to do that in a television show where I had to pull out all of the tools I learned in school to do that dialect and that lilt of cadence.
I had read somewhere, I think, that the original script that you guys had all read pushed further and was a little edgier than what you ended up shooting. What was it that you originally read?
Yeah, a little edgier is putting it way mild. I mean, this was like...
Oh, really?
I don't know if this is appropriate, but it was like soft to medium core porn. I mean, it was very explicit and very descriptive. There were pages and pages just describing the sex and the intimate encounters. So that's always, there were some things that you knew reading it just were not going to show up on screen. It's just like, that's not what we do in television. And you could understand, like, okay, the point of that is more to describe for the actors what the characters are experiencing or doing. But with Netflix and with Ryan, you never know, because there aren't really any rules. They can kind of decide to do whatever they want to do and go as far as they want to go. So you're definitely signing up for kind of whatever they want to do. Now, in the first conversation, Ryan said, I want to do it tastefully. I want it to all be purposeful, which is, talk is cheap. Anyone can say that and then show up in the end and be like, well, it'd be a little sexier if we did this, so let's do it. But Ryan stuck to that definitely. And I think in reading it, the reason I wasn't immediately turned off, no pun intended, by the whole thing was one of the points of the show, I think, was to take versions of these glamorous, icons that we know from that age, which was considered a little more sophisticated and a little more pristine, and you wouldn't think of it as being debaucherous particularly. Mm-hmm. And showing those people being debaucherous and having all of the base instincts and fantasies and cravings and kinks, that anybody has in any era, but were definitely shoved under the rug in those days to preserve the glistening images that they wanted to put forward to the public.
Was there a scene that you read that you thought, I don't know if I can do this, or a scene that you read that you had questions about when you were reading the original script?
Yeah, well, so first of all, every scene I read, I wonder whether I can do it. I have no idea whether I'm going to be able to do it until I show up on the day, and even then, it's sometimes a question. But as far as the sex stuff, the first big scene, the scene where Jack gets introduced to the world and has turns his first trick, basically. In the finished product, that's a beautiful scene with Patti LuPone, and really much more than it being about the sex. It's about the two characters and these two sort of lonely people who happen to find each other and happen to connect and happen to be able to offer each other something deeper than just physical, fulfillment. Although I'd like to think that was part of it too. After the camera cuts away, that scene was originally, again, I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to be saying this, but what am I going to do? It was originally a scene between my character and the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, who are featured in the book by Scotty Bowers, Secret Life of Hollywood, or
Full Service.
Is that what it's called? Full Service, yeah. The documentary is called. Full Service is The Secret Life of Hollywood, or something like that. Anyway, yes. In Scotty's book, he describes interacting with the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and so I think that it was lifted from that as a scene that may well have taken place, if slightly differently, and that went definitely a little bit farther and had less to do with the characters, and I think more to do with just the sort of fun salaciousness of the activities. And when I read it, I thought that would be a really big challenge. And really the biggest challenge would be, that's the most difficult thing for an actor to do, is just to simulate sex and have this sort of crazy thing happen to them. It's much easier to do a scene with a character where it's about character development and growth and relationship. That's really what we're trained to do. So I was very happy when I think Ryan was sort of always thinking that he had to rethink that scene. He liked elements of it, but definitely it needed to be rethought. And so when it was with very little warning, with about a week's warning, maybe even less, we got the new scene where it was Patty's character, and it was this beautiful long exchange between us where we really got to know each other.
And were you supposed to eventually meet Patty's character, or was that all new in terms of like the arc of your character?
No, I mean, I think this was after Patti was cast and established as the wife of the studio head, who would eventually get some power and have some, take over the reins for a little while. So that's I think why it was a no-brainer, because we knew that this was going to end up happening with Patty's character. So why not start it here, right at the beginning in the first episode?
At what point did you and Patty shoot that scene? Was it early on in sort of your working with her, or was it later when you just...
It was pretty early on. I mean, with first episodes, it was in the first few weeks. We had... It's kind of funny. People ask, like, how well did we know each other when we shot that scene? we knew each other pretty well because the week before we had shot the scene from episode 2 where there is no dialogue. I'm railing her on the banister, on the railing, the stairs up to her Oscars, her cage of Oscars. So we had broken the ice at that point. We had gotten to know each other quite well at that point. So it was somewhat tame, actually, then going to do this nice, luxurious 3-page dialogue scene.
There's been a lot of comparison to Hollywood with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie. Did you guys see a parallel, or was it pitched to you in a same vein, or was there nothing really sort of? Do you feel like the two pieces communicate to each other or speak to each other?
I don't remember. When did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood come out?
I guess it would have come out. You know what? I guess you're right. It probably was after. It came out last May was when they screened it in Cannes, and then it came out last summer. So you had.
So my conversation with Ryan would have happened before that in March. So I'm not sure that I was aware of it, and I don't remember him mentioning it. But yeah, I mean, the obvious parallel is that they're both historical fiction. They take real people and fictionalized characters and mesh them together, and then. As I think with historical fiction, you have two options. You either take some fictional characters and some real characters and then play them out through history, or you take a little detour and change history and imagine something else happened. And then just the thing about both movies being about people making movies, which I think is a really fun subject matter for film, because the people making the films know better than anybody what it's like to make films. So they're the best people to tell those stories. Whereas, films or shows about lawyers, coming from a family of lawyers, my family's always frustrated with shows about lawyers because most filmmakers don't really know very much about lawyers and, what their lives are like. So it's much easier for them to make a really in-depth exploration of the film industry than it is anything else.
You're also in The Politician. Their second season's coming out this summer. Is there anything you can tell us?
I'm in it. I'm definitely in it. Yeah, other than that, not much. I think that is also going to be... don't quote me on this because I actually don't know, but I think the idea is that's also only going to be 7 episodes.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same wonderful returning cast: Ben and Lucy and Laura and Theo and Ronnie and Zoe and Bette Midler and Judith Light have much bigger arcs in this one. They take us through the whole season, and I show up from time to time, sort of as I did in the first season.
And Gwyneth Paltrow too, right?
Yes, Gwyneth's in it. I didn't cross paths with her in my couple of days of shooting, which is always a bummer. She's a wonderful person to cross paths with. Have you seen The Politician, or do you know what happens, or do you only know what you shot? No, I only know. I mean, I got the scripts that I was in, but I'm not in all the episodes, so I didn't read the whole thing, which is fun actually. I'll get to watch it as an audience member, which I always like doing. I sort of got to do that with the middle episodes in the first season because I wasn't in them. But it's always fun, especially when you know and love the actors in it, to get to watch it as an audience member and just cheer them on. I think I'm going to get to watch them a little before the general public will get to, which will be good quarantine watching.
Did you, in making The Politician, was there always a knowledge that it would be coming out in election year? And was there a sense of how political, because I think we know where it's going to head with Bette Midler's character, but like how political would you say it goes?
I really don't know, because at this point River is very uninvolved in the politics. He really is just functioning as Ben's character's conscience guiding him. So I don't know. I mean, Ryan is pretty. He knows when elections are, and I think there's definitely some thought that goes into it. But at the same time, I think he wants it to be. I'm pretty sure he said that he wants it to be more. He doesn't want people to relate it too directly to the literal elections that are going on. I think he's much more interested in getting young people interested in the idea of politics and showing them young people on screen doing exciting, interesting things in politics, just as a matter of representation and imagination, so that, you know, young people can imagine themselves up there doing similar things, although the things that happen in the politician you might not want to emulate particularly, apart from getting involved.
And then finally, I just wanted to ask you, are you reading scripts? You've had such a big past few months. Everyone has seen Hollywood. Are you reading scripts? Are you looking at things? What would you like to do looking forward in your career?
Yeah, reading scripts, as I have been reading scripts for the last 4 years. Occasionally, there are some people who are a little more interested to talk to me than they would have been before one of these shows came out. But I think as any actor who has had anything that they would call a success, you know, a show that people have seen or a film that people have seen, it's not like, I mean, it's very rare that things really change overnight, and I'm back to auditioning. I've made some self-tapes in quarantine. It's wonderful that we have such good self-tape technology, so that we can keep sending in tapes here and there. Yeah, so reading is sort of all of what's happening at the moment. It's all about prepping and making sure, you know, the studios and the streamers and everybody have material lined up for when we can get back to work. So it's been fun. I love reading scripts. I've been working on writing stuff as well, and I have a camera, so I've been shooting music videos for my friends, socially distanced music videos for my buddy who makes music, which is a ton of fun. And
you're a character in the music videos, or you're
No. I'm holding the camera. I shoot and direct, and then I edit it. I love editing too, so I've been doing that. Nothing to speak of particularly. The hustle continues.
David, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. If you haven't seen Hollywood, it's on Netflix. The Politician will also be coming to Netflix soon. Thank you for your time, and thanks guys for watching. See you later.
Thank you so much, man.